The life of the chosen ones has always carried within it the quiet ache of not fitting in. For when the hand of God sets a seal on a soul, that soul is no longer shaped by the ordinary mold of the world. And this becomes a burden as well as a blessing, because even though the heart desires connection, fellowship, and belonging, the spirit within keeps whispering that you were not made to blend in, but to stand apart. And this truth often weighs heavily on those called, for they find themselves misunderstood. In family gatherings where laughter flows, yet something inside reminds them that their laughter carries a different sound. In workplaces where colleagues form bonds over gossip and light chatter, yet their spirit recoils because it cannot mingle with corruption or careless speech. In friendships where compromise is expected, yet the chosen cannot compromise without feeling the sharp sting of conviction. And in spiritual circles too, where one might expect acceptance, yet the chosen often feel isolated because their hunger for God pierces deeper than the surface rituals others are content with. And this was seen in the life of Joseph, whose dreams set him apart even among his brothers. For the hand of destiny upon him made him misunderstood, ridiculed, and rejected, and though he tried to belong, he could not, because light cannot blend with darkness, and the divine purpose within him made his presence a disruption to ordinary patterns. So it is with chosen ones who walk through seasons of loneliness and the piercing silence of not being embraced by those they love. And it is written that the world will love its own, but because you are not of the world hates you, which explains why chosen ones encounter suspicion, envy, and rejection. Where they expect love, why they struggle to be invited into circles, yet are quietly set aside, for their very spirit exposes what is hidden and convicts without words. And though they may attempt to silence their uniqueness, to dim their light, to dress themselves in the garments of conformity, still the difference cannot be erased because the anointing is not cosmetic, but internal, a mark of heaven that rests upon their countenance, upon their words, upon their walk. And the chosen feel this tension daily, carrying the invisible weight of being both present in the world and yet absent from its attachments. And sometimes they wonder why they cannot enjoy the ease others enjoy, why their conscience burns when they attempt small sins, why their heart aches when they bend toward compromise. And they begin to realize that being chosen is not an achievement but a consecration, one that costs friendships, opportunities, and sometimes even the embrace of family. And it is this cost that produces the loneliness many cannot articulate. For chosen ones often cry in secret, asking why they cannot be normal, why they are always the odd one out. And yet heaven whispers that to be normal in a fallen world is to be estranged from God. So the very discomfort they feel is evidence of their adoption into divine purpose. And in the scriptures, we see that prophets, apostles, and servants of God were always strangers, exiles, pilgrims, carrying an unseen citizenship that made them peculiar in their generation. And though they longed for companionship, they were often pushed into solitude, where God became their closest friend, their truest confidant, their surest companion. And the chosen ones today walk the same road, navigating environments where their presence is tolerated but not celebrated, enduring misunderstandings where their motives are questioned, though their hearts are pure, and carrying dreams and visions they cannot easily share for fear of ridicule. For just as Mary kept the angel's words in her heart, chosen ones too must often keep their revelations hidden, pondering them in silence because few around them can bear the weight of divine mysteries. And this silence intensifies the sense of isolation. For while others live carefree, they carry secrets of destiny that demand discipline, prayer, and restraint, making them appear aloof or too serious in the eyes of others. But the truth is, they are simply walking with a fire inside them that the world cannot comprehend. And this fire isolates them because passion always separates. Holiness always divides. Truth always stirs resistance. And though chosen ones may attempt to silence this fire for the sake of fitting in, the fire cannot be quenched. For Jeremiah confessed that the word of the Lord was like fire shut up in his bones. He grew weary of holding it in, and indeed he could not. And so the chosen too cannot bury their calling under the soil of conformity, for eventually it rises, forcing them again into the uncomfortable space of being different. And in this space they wrestle with the desire for human approval and the demand of divine obedience. And often they must choose obedience, though it costs them dearly. And this cost shows up in practical ways too, like being left out of invitations because they do not drink or participate in worldly entertainment, like being bypassed for promotions because they refuse to flatter or to engage in unethical practices, like being criticized as too intense or too deep because they hunger for God in a world content with superficiality. And even in family, chosen ones sometimes face the sting of rejection, accused of being proud or judgmental simply because their standards expose the compromise of others. Yet the heart of the chosen breaks under these accusations, for they are not trying to condemn, but simply to live authentically to the call of God upon their lives. And though tears fall, they keep walking because the voice of the shepherd compels them forward. And over time, they learn that fitting in is not their assignment. Transformation is, influence is, obedience is, and this realization eases the pain, though it does not erase it, for as long as flesh longs for companionship, there will be moments of ache. But the Spirit comforts with the reminder that friendship with God outweighs the rejection of men, and in that comfort, the chosen rise again, carrying the quiet dignity of those who walk with heaven's approval, though earth's applause is absent. And in that dignity they continue, misunderstood but steadfast, lonely yet never abandoned, rejected yet fully accepted in the beloved, marked as strangers on earth but heirs in the kingdom that cannot be shaken, walking through life as living testimonies that being chosen will always mean being different, and being different will always mean struggling to fit in. But the struggle itself is evidence of divine purpose burning within. And though the world may not understand, heaven smiles. For the ones who cannot fit in are the very ones through whom God fits his kingdom into the world. And as we move deeper into the reality of why chosen ones struggle to fit in, it becomes clear that this struggle is not merely social or circumstantial, but profoundly spiritual. For the very identity of the chosen is rooted in separation. And separation is never comfortable because it calls a soul out of the familiar into the unknown, out of the crowd into the wilderness, out of temporary pleasures into eternal purposes. And though this separation is the very thing that safeguards destiny, it also produces the ache of being misunderstood, the ache of being misrepresented, and the ache of being misaligned in the eyes of others. Yet Scripture reminds us that Abraham was called to leave his country, his people, and his father's household to go to a land God would show him. And this departure marked not just a physical relocation, but a spiritual disconnection from familiar systems. And so it is with chosen ones. They are often compelled to walk away from what everyone else clings to, compelled to detach from what others are attached to, compelled to say no where others say yes. And in this process, they begin to feel the sting of isolation. But the deeper truth is that God uses this separation to prune, to refine, to prepare, because the chosen cannot be poured into unless they are first emptied of worldly molds. And that emptiness feels like rejection, though in truth it is preparation. And in this preparation, the chosen learn to survive without the validation of others. They learn to walk without constant affirmation. They learn to trust the invisible hand of God, even when visible hands withdraw. And this lesson, though painful, becomes their strength. For one who has walked alone with God carries a resilience that cannot be shaken by the shifting winds of human opinion. Yet still the humanity within them craves connection. So there is a constant tension, a push and pull between the longing for belonging and the calling of separation. And this tension is one of the greatest hidden burdens of chosen ones. For they smile while silently wondering why their presence always feels out of sync. They serve while silently feeling left out. They love while silently being treated as outsiders. And this hidden pain sometimes tempts them to compromise, to blend in just enough to silence the ache. But each time they try, the spirit within refuses, convicting them with a heaviness they cannot ignore until they return to obedience. And in returning, they are reminded again that their lives are not their own, but have been set apart for purposes greater than fitting in. And this awareness deepens as they grow, for they begin to notice patterns. Opportunities others seize are withheld from them. Paths others take are closed to them. Doors others walk through remain shut in their faces, not because they are unworthy, but because those doors are too small for the greatness within them. And though at first this feels like repeated rejection, in time they realize it is divine protection. For God will not allow them to be caged by environments that would suffocate their calling. And so while others rise through compromise, the chosen rise through patience. While others advance by shortcuts, the chosen advance by obedience. While others belong by assimilation, the chosen belong by consecration. And this difference, though invisible to most, becomes visible in seasons of testing. For when storms come, the chosen stand rooted, while others are swept away. When trials arise, the chosen endure, while others collapse because their foundation is not human applause, but divine approval. And this strength, born of isolation, becomes their silent testimony. And still, in the practical realities of life, this difference remains hard. For the chosen find themselves struggling in relationships where they are loved yet not understood, struggling in workplaces where their integrity costs them advancement, struggling in ministries where their hunger for depth makes them seem excessive, and in society where their refusal to bow to trends makes them appear outdated. And these struggles take a toll on their emotions, sometimes making them question whether being chosen is worth the pain. But in these moments, the Spirit gently reminds them that the crown cannot be separated from the cross, that glory cannot be separated from suffering, and that being chosen is not a privilege without a price, but a privilege sealed with endurance. And the chosen begin to see that their difference, though painful, is a gift, for it prevents them from being trapped in the fleeting currents of the world. It keeps them aligned with the eternal. It keeps their ears open to heaven, and it keeps their hearts sensitive to the Spirit. And over time, what once felt like rejection begins to feel like refinement. What once felt like loneliness begins to feel like intimacy with God. What once felt like an unbearable burden begins to feel like a sacred calling. And this transformation does not erase the pain of not fitting in, but redeems it, turning the ache into oil, the loneliness into light, the rejection into resilience. And the chosen begin to shine without even trying. For their difference becomes their power, their separation becomes their strength, and their inability to fit in becomes the very reason they stand out. For God has always raised his servants from among those who could not blend in, from Noah building an ark in mockery, to Moses fleeing into the wilderness, to David singing psalms while tending sheep alone, to Esther concealing her identity until the appointed time, to John crying in the wilderness, to Christ himself despised and rejected by men, yet chosen and precious to God. And in this long thread of divine history, the chosen of today find their story reflected, realizing that their struggle is not new, but ancient, not personal, but spiritual, not meaningless, but meaningful. And this realization steadies their hearts, allowing them to embrace the tension with quiet dignity. So then, chosen ones who wrestle with not fitting in, must remember that this struggle is not evidence of something wrong with them, but something profoundly right. It is not proof of deficiency, but proof of destiny. It is not a curse, but a confirmation that the seal of heaven is upon them. And though the road is narrow and the cost is high, the reward is eternal. For in the end, the chosen do not seek to fit into fading systems, but to stand firm in an unshakable kingdom. And until that day, they walk as strangers and pilgrims on the earth, carrying within them a light the world cannot comprehend, living as testimonies that one can be in the world, but not of it, walking with the quiet strength of those who know that their citizenship is in heaven. And though the world may never fully receive them, heaven has already embraced them. And so to you who feel the ache of always standing on the outside, to you who wonder why belonging seems like a door that never opens, to you who question if being chosen is worth the loneliness, hear this gentle reminder. The reason you cannot fit in is because you were not made to. The reason you are restless among crowds is because your rest is in God. The reason you are different is because you were designed for different. And while others may laugh today, the day will come when your difference will be the very reason God uses you, the very reason lives are transformed through you, the very reason His kingdom advances by you. And until that day, hold steady, for your struggle is not in vain, your isolation is not wasted, and your tears are not forgotten. For the one who called you is faithful, and He will finish the work He began in you.